Good morning, all. We'll wait for another 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll start at sharp 11. So, a very warm good morning to each one of you who have joined for the Python development series part 3. So, in the last two sessions, we were particularly focusing on Python basics. So, I hope most of you have attended part 1 and part 2, where we focused on the basics, like with the concepts, like how to do, how to create a class, methods, list, etc. So today we're gonna go little deep into the Python. So we'll be discussing more into Django basics, and I think there was some leftover portions in part 2, which was conducted on the last Saturday. So that will be also covered right now, and then we'll be going more into Django basics. And one more announcement, like we have scheduled a session in data science on October 26th. I hope most of you know it. So it's scheduled on 6:30 p.m. on October 26th, Monday. So where you could see how to leverage these Python concepts in the data science. So stay tuned. And finally, a thank you note for each one of you, because we have crossed 1K subscribers, and a big thanks to each one of you. So happy learning. So let me hand over to Shan. He will be taking a walkthrough about today's session. So over to you, Shan.
Thank you, Manu. So, good morning to all. and welcome back everyone to the third day for the Python series. I hope everybody are well versed with whatever the concepts we have learned so far. So today will be our last day with the Python basics, and we'll be trying to get started with the Django framework. Okay. And once again, I remind you, like whatever we have covered, it's not the 100% of Python. We have barely scratched the surface. So make sure you reference the Python documentation, your other YouTube videos, and also try to make most of our Python support groups to learn more about it. But I'm sure like whatever you have learned so far is going to be useful, and there is a lot which you can do with that knowledge. Okay, so let's start by reviewing what we have learned on day 2. So we started with the while loop. We know like how we can assign multiple variables, list and dictionary comprehensions. We have seen like how to use methods, and we have also seen the basics of classes, right? So for today's training, we will be resuming our session with the classes, whatever is left from that. And we will see like how we can handle files. Then we are going to move with like how is the packages or the libraries can be managed in Python. And that will be the end of our Python basics. Then we will be seeing like what is MVC design pattern and entering the world of Django. Okay. So if we time it right, again, we are not going to increase the pace. But yeah, if we are timing is right, we will end our session with a Hello World program in Django. So I hope everybody is ready with their laptops and the PyCharm ID to start today's session. Okay, so shall we start? So please make use of the YouTube live chat feature to interact with me. Okay. So let's start with the classes, and let's see like what we haven't covered or not. So I may be repeating few of the things for the people who might have missed the last portion, or just as a refresher. Right. So let's start with a new class here. And I'm naming it a book. And let's start with a basic Python class. That is class, and I'm saying book. Right. And we have seen like how we can create a constructor in Python, that is with the function def __ init. And we also know like how we can create a variable within the init class, right? So for example, I'm saying like a self dot title. And let's take a price as well. Right. Now this is how a basic book looks like, or a class with a for the book looks like. Now what we're going to do is like we can write one more public method. So that will be like same as your init. So I'm saying show price. Let's print itself. Oh, sorry for that. I hope this is fine now. Sorry for the inconvenience since there is a little bit of delay between the YouTube stream and whatever I'm doing. So the response is a little bit delayed. So sorry for that. I hope it is visible now. Great. Let's try to create an instance of book. So I'm saying small letter book. Same. Right. Good. Now let's run it. So I hope everybody remembers how to run it. So you can just right click and click on run book. So there is no error. But since we haven't invoked the public method, you are not seeing any output on the console. So let's try that. Right. So this is something which we have covered in the last session. So let's see if everybody is on track. So please comment on the live chat if everybody is able to get this output. Are you able to see this output on your console? Sorry. Okay. Great. So as you can see, all our attributes are defined inside the init method, right? Now let's see like if we can create this outside the method, like a normal class. So for example, let's say I'm saying, let's see. Right. Now let's try to print that. So I'm going to print. So you can see like you can also define the attributes outside the init method as well, right? So let's try to run it again. Right? Now let's try to create another book. Let's say I'm saying ebook. And let's say right, and I'm again printing. Right? So I'm just printing out the attributes. So it's printing out. Now let's try to change the attribute. Right? So I'm printing again. I'm printing for both. So we have two book classes. One is ebook and one is a normal book. Right? So this is how you can interact with the classes. So is this clear? Please feel free to put the chat, even if you are not stuck or if you are on track, so that I will get a feeling like, okay, you guys are following or not. So shall we move on? Okay, so I am taking that as a yes, and we are moving forward. So next what we are going to see is like what is a destructor. Now this is just like most of the time we might need to use it because similar to Java, we have a garbage collector for Python as well. So you really don't need to deallocate any memories, but just in case, if you want to use a destructor, you can use the method __del, and you can say destroyed. Right. Now, how you can invoke the restricted method is using the keyword del. So you can say book and ebook. So now if I run again, you can see the print here that is destroyed. And this del keyword is not only for class. So as we have seen, all the whatever we are writing in Python is an object. You can use the del on any variables. Okay. So make sure you only use variables. Okay. So I hope directory is also clear. So okay. So yeah, if you have any doubts, you can always post on the chat. Now let's move on to something called as inheritance. So I hope everybody knows the basic concept of inheritance. So that is like you have a parent class, and from this you want to inherit a child class, right? So let's see how we can do it. So I'm reverting back to a normal class, and I'm creating a new class called ebook. And here I'm inheriting the already defined class that is book. Now ebook also I'm going to create a init, and so let's say I'm going to create a new variable called, let's say, self dot provider. So I hope this is clear. Now what we are going to do is like to really initiate the class, we actually have to call the init method for the superclass. So how we can do it? So here you have to make use of something called as a superclass or a super method. So we need title, price to really initiate the constructor. So how we can do it, like we can call super dot init, and we can pass the title and the price, right? Now let's try to create a child class or of the ebook. So let's say ebook, and we have to pass title, price, and provider. Now let's see if we can access the parent methods. So if you can see, I have the show price method, which is already defined in my parent class. So let's try to run it and see if our coding is right. So you can see like my price method is called, and just before our program exited, you can see even without the del keyword, it has invoked the destroyed method. The reason is like that's when your garbage collector kicks in. Okay. So just to avoid the confusion, I'm going to remove the del method at the moment. We don't need it. So did everybody got the output? Can I get a response if everybody got the output? Okay, so I'm taking that as a yes, and I'm moving forward. So next, why we are going to look at is basically the something called as a property. So you might have seen like everything which we are defining in a class shouldn't be actually exposed directly. Okay, so that's not a really good coding practice. So what we usually do is like we create something called as a private variables, and then we give the getters and setters to interact with variable. So for example, if I'm creating a ebook, okay, so let's get rid of inheritance here because we are done so far. So if you can see, I can actually directly access the variable inside the class. So if I can say, I can say book.price. Okay, I got a question again, like what is a super method? So super method is used to access your super class. So that means like if I can undo a little bit. So you can see when I'm using super method, I'm actually accessing the super class. So that is whatever is here, right? So when I'm saying like super of dot underscore underscore init, it is actually invoking the constructor of the parent class. I hope it's clear now. Okay. So moving forward. So I can print like this. Now, this is not a right method because you are accessing a class variable directly. So what we are going to do is like, we are going to make this attribute private. Now, we don't have any keywords as such, as in other programming language like public or private. So by default, it is public. So to make it private, you can prefix underscore underscore with it. So this is something which you cannot access. Okay. All okay. Now to access this thing, what we are going to do as a standard practice is to write a method called get or set. So let's try to write two public methods. Let's say set title, and I'm going to say self dot title, and I'm going to get another method called get title, where it actually returns your title, right? So now if you want to access anything, you are not going to call any attributes like this. Instead, you will be calling the methods like, let's say, get title. And if you want to change anything, you are going to call the method set title. So right. So let's try again. Right. Now let's see something called as like a property here. Okay. Now this might be a little tricky for everybody to like, okay, you have to call this method to set, or if you want to get another method to set it. So Python provides you another facility called as property. So what we are going to do is like we are going to set a public property like self.title itself and say it as property. And here you are going to pass your get and set methods. So I will say get title, and I can say self.set title, right? So let's see if it works. So you can see it is working. But you guys not the difference what we have done here. So what is the variable we are trying to protect? That is underscore underscore title, which is a private variable, right? So instead of directly invoking the methods for the getters and setters, we are assigning the property so that the variable gives you a provision to actually use the property as similar to a normal class variable. So this is easier for development because you don't have to remember the or add or the suffixes of set underscore or get underscore. Okay, so this is one more very important concept. So let me know if it is done. Are you able to get the output? Okay, guys. So let's take a little bit of a break here, and let's reconvene at 11:40. So meanwhile, if you have any queries, please post it on the live chat. I'll try to answer. Okay, so I got a interesting method here, like what will happen if we interchange get title and set title. So remember that property is again a kind of a function. So and it is expecting your arguments in a order. So it's not a really a good idea to interchange it. So because it is like we have to know like what we are doing. And when we are using a function, we have to know what are the arguments it is expecting. So I wouldn't do that because this is what it is expecting. Okay, somebody has asked me to scroll down, but I don't have anything here. Are you expecting this one? Okay, guys, so welcome back. So I hope this is fine with you, and we know we have touch base all the basics of classes. So now you know how to create a class, how to create a constructor, a destructor, how to create class methods, how to create a property, how to use what is it, the inheritance, and also how to create a private variable, right? And we don't have any concept of protected in Python. Okay, but some people, as a coding standard, what they used to do is like they just uh, prefix underscore before the variable name to say that, yeah, it is protected. But this is not going to put you any restriction. But if you do like a underscore title, and if you try to access this variable, it will give you an error. Okay. So that's why we always say like our Python has as built-in, it has only uh, two modifiers, that is public and private. Okay. Okay, so I'm getting another question again based on the property. So property is something which combines your get and set methods for your private variable. So I'm going to explain it again a little bit. So instead of calling, let's put like this way. If I want to set a title for my book, I have to say dot set title. Okay. Oh, that's it. And if I want to print this book, I can say print. Right. So you can say it like this. Now, the same code, I'm going to rewrite this with using property. So for that, what I'm going to do is like, I use it like a normal variable. So so you can see like how different it is with the help of a property. So it is just for the clean coding. So the usage is like a normal variable, but what you are really doing is you are protecting your private variable. And it is also possible like you can, it's not like this is the only thing you can do. Okay. So for example, if you want to format something, so let's say set title, and what I'm going to do is like whatever title you are posting, I'm saying okay, star. And if I run it, you'll be getting the properties, right? I think there's something else wrong. Okay, I think that there is some confusion here. So, okay, I'm not going to debug it right now. Probably I'll get back to it after the session or probably in the next session. Okay, so sorry for the confusion. So I'm not going to take your time here. So let's move on to file handling. Please feel free to drop your questions in the YouTube channel. or our WhatsApp group, so that if you are not clear with anything and you need any support after the session. Okay, so let's move on to file operations. So file handling in Python is also very much straightforward because even your file is actually treated as your one of your primitive or non-primitive data types. So that means like you don't have to really import any libraries or anything to actually read or write a file. Okay. And for that, we have a function called open to create a file or a read a file. And we also have a statement called with, which you can define the scope of the file operation. And basically, if you might have already worked with files on any other programming languages, we have a couple of open arguments or modes. So for example, why you want to interact with a file. So basically, if you want to read some data or write some data, right? So you can see like so those are the first two modes, that like a read or write. So read, there is a explicit requirement that file should exist. Write, that means like you really need, if a file is not there, it will create a new file, or if it is already there, it will override it. Now you have something called as X, which I'm not sure like will be available in other programming languages, but yeah, if you put X instead of W, it is called an exclusive creation. That means like it will create only new file. If already a file is existing, it will fail. Okay. Then we have an append mode. So basically, if you already have a file with some content, it will add any more lines to the end of it. Then you have a binary mode if you are operating with binary files such as your images or videos. Then you have your text mode, which is by default. So if you are opening any file by default, it will be in text mode. Then you have a plus. Now, plus you cannot use it as it is. You have to use it with in conjunction with R or W. So if you do like a R plus, it will be open in a read write mode, but read write in a append mode. So if you have like 3 lines of code, your new line will be starting at the end, but you can also read the file from it. Okay, read the contents. But if you put a plus with a W plus, so what it will do is like it will override the file. So what you are going to get is a blank file. But again, it's a read write mode. So with the same variable, you can read and write. Okay. So now let's try to read and write a file. So opening a file is really straightforward. So I'm saying my open, and I can put a file name. So by default, if it is in the working directory, so I can say like a file .txt and the mode. So what I'm going to do is like first I'm going to create an empty file. And I'm going to write few things into it. So let's say new file dot write lines. let's say right. This is a sample text, right? And you can, once it is done, you can close it. Okay, so let's run it again. So you see, if you can see in your Project Explorer, you should have got a file called myfile.txt. So can you confirm if you got this output? Is a file created already? Could you please comment on the chat so that I will know? Great. Now let's try to read it back, right? So fine. Now since we have a file, we can read it back with the mode R. So I can say print. Okay, so let's say read lines. So read lines will read everything from the file. So that means like every lines. So this is the easiest part. So if you are working with files, so let's try it. So you can see it has been read back. Now let's try to change something manually here. So I'm going to and we are going to iterate it out. So for example, I'm going to say for every line in new file dot read lines print line. And let's put some movie names. Right. So what we are going to do is like we are going to read everything in that line file in a loop. So you can say it is printed out, but you can also see there is a blank lines, right? The reason is like we are already having a blank line in your file. Plus, whenever you are doing a print operation, it is also adding a blank line. So if you want to get rid of it, you can use the function called strip. So this will get rid of those characters. Now, if I run it again, you can see you got it without the additional blank lines. Clear? Oh, okay. That is good. Now, what I can one more show you since we have already brought up for loop. If you want to really iterate with the index as well, you can also say enumerate. And here I'm going to put the index. So I can say I can print both line number or so it will be zero based index. So you will get it like this. Okay. Now that if you have seen, I haven't actually closed the file, and that is really not a good idea to do that. So you also have to call the close function once you are done with the file usage. Now, to handle any exceptions inside while you are operating with a file, or if you want to make sure like the scope is limited, we have something called as a with statement. So how you can use the with is like the same line I'm going to use it. So I say with open. It's good file. Let's say we are going to print it. Okay. Now, only thing is like you cannot write any integers directly if you are writing into a text file. So you are going to convert your string, convert whatever you are going to write into a string. Okay, let's say numbers. Now let's try to run it. So you can see I have got the new file here with all the numbers. Again, it's like more or less same as your other programming languages. So if you want to put a new line, you can add it. Like this. So what is the difference between these two lines is like, you can also do this in write mode. The only thing is like if you are using a with statement, the scope, so that means like you cannot access your out file outside the with statement. Okay. So this is not a valid thing because your file is only available within the with block. And all the exceptions or the opening and closing, everything is handled within the block. So this is another good idea while working with files. So that if you also forget to close your file, it is not really going to affect you. Otherwise, especially with your write mode, if you don't close the file, you are not going to get your lines because it is buffered. That means like unless you close the file, your content is not going to be returned, or it's on your process side. So is everybody clear with the with statement and the file operations? Okay, fine. Now, till now we have only worked with the libraries which we have already done. So let's see, like if you want to have a need to install more libraries, for example, if you want to interact with your MySQL DB, there is no inbuilt support in Python, right? I mean, like you have to import some libraries or download some libraries. Or for example, if you want to, somebody who are familiar with the test automation, you really need to use Selenium. You have to make sure like you download and install the required Selenium libraries for Python. Now, how we can do it? So, so I'm going to introduce something called as a pip. That is like a Python index package manager. So, if you can open your browser and go to or Google PyPI, like it is the Python package index. So this is like a more of your like who are familiar of with Maven. So this is where you can find all your Python packages. So we have already seen like okay, we are going to work with Django. So let's see like if we have the Django package here. So search for Django. So here you can see yes, Django is available here, and you can find all the requirements or the documentation, everything here. Also, you can find the command of pip install or how to install this in your system, right? So let's go back to our IDE and see if the pip works. So everybody, can you just go to the terminal and just try to type PIP and enter. Okay. So is everybody getting the output like this of the usage pipe? So this is to make ensure that you have the pip installed. Okay. Now, if you want to see if what are the available packages installed in your Python, that is the external packages, what you can do is like you can do pip space freeze. Okay. Now, since everybody is using the PyCharm, there is another easier way, or I think everybody who likes UI, if you can go to your file and your preferences. So it depends on your OS. So you might find it in your file menu if you are using Windows. And you can type for interpreter. Can you get this window? So this is a package manager or PyPI index for your PyCharm. So that means like if you want to install something or find something, you don't have to go to the web page which I've shown you earlier. You can find a plus icon in the bottom left of the window, which says install. So you can click on that, and here you can search for your whatever package manager or the packages you need. So if I install this package, so it is just like a click. So you can say install package. So you can see it is actually downloading the package. And once it is done, it will be listed here. So you can see like I have only installed the Django package, but there are few other things which actually came as part of as a dependency for Django. Okay. So similarly, you can find any packages here. So for example, if you can search for Selenium, you can find the Selenium libraries here. Okay. So there are like thousands of libraries available here. But make sure like, it is not really 100% sure that all the libraries will work for your version of Python or your flavor of Python. So for example, if you are using a Jython-based interpreter or Anaconda or .NET-based interpreter, some might not work with. But I would say the most of the packages which are working is for standard Python. That is the one which we are using currently. Okay. Now, let's say if you want to share your project with somebody, okay, and you've already used a n number of libraries. So, for example, let's say if I do a pip freeze again, you can see all the packages you have installed externally is listed here with the proper version numbers, right? So if you are passing it to your colleagues or your friends, you want to make sure like they also install the same version of the packages so that your project will work, right? Because you are not going to share your virtual environment or Python binaries with your friends. You are only going to share your project. So that means your code. So for that, especially with if you are handling a big projects, you might be using like maybe like 50 plus packages or hundreds of packages, and it is not easy to like write it down or do it one by one. So what we can do is like we can create a requirement file. So for example, you can see like we have like this 4 items to be installed now. So if you want to pass this, what we are going to do is like we are writing this content into a file. So the easiest way to do it is to redirect it. So this is not related to Python. You can do it with any Windows command or Linux commands. So you can put a this greater than arrow and put a file name. So for example, I can say requirements.txt. If you do like this, what it will do is like whatever the output you are seeing on the console, it will be redirected into a file. So you can see there should be a file, new file created with the name requirements.txt. And the package is there. Now, if you want to install it back, so for example, let's try to uninstall everything. So you can go back to your interpreter and uninstall everything. So you have a minus sign which says uninstall. Okay. So I don't have this file. Now with one command like PIP install -r and your requirement file. So if you do like this, it will install every packages which is defined in your requirement file. So now if you go back to your interpreter or preferences, you can see those files are back. If you are not getting anything from the pip freeze command, that means like you don't have anything installed. So make sure you install something before you do a pip freeze. So I'm repeating for those who haven't got it. So let me clear it. So install something from your preferences. Install anything, so it's fine. So I have installed Django. You can, let's say, you can install something called as a request library. Okay. Then do a pip freeze again. Okay. So are you able to get any output in your pip freeze command now? Can I get some inputs in the chat, please? Are you able to get any output for your PIP space freeze command? Okay, great. So now if you do again pip freeze and redirect with greater than symbol and your file, any file name, you should be able to get this output. Right? And make sure whenever you are doing any of these things, you are actually able to see, make sure the file exists in the same directory of your terminal. So for example, if I do ls, or I think if it is, if you're working with Windows, you can type dir. So like this. And if you type dir or ls, you should see the file name here, whichever you are passing as part of pip freeze or pip install -r. Clear? Okay, guys. So we are ending our basics of Python here, and we are going to start with Django. So how confident are you, like, with whatever we have learned so far in the last 3 days? Do you think like you can handle the simple programs with a simple class or basic sorting or functions? So I just want to know your confidence level before we move on to the Django, because that is like a little bit more advanced topic. So can I get a vote of confidence, please? Are we good with the Python basics? Okay, so I take it as a collective yes, and we are going to move ahead with the Django. Okay, so congratulations, guys, because I don't think it was like an easy job to understand it. Yes, because from my perspective as a trainer, I can teach you, but understanding is your achievement. Okay, so uh, every one of you deserve a pat on your back. So, and congratulations, you have completed the Python basics. And every one of you are going to now learn the advanced topics. Okay, that is basically a framework based on Python. Okay, so I think I'm getting one more question about the virtual environment. So don't worry, we are going to explore more about virtual environment once we are going to enter Django. Okay. So stay tuned. Okay. So now let's deviate a little bit with the coding, and let's go back to like what is actually a client server architecture we are using. I hope everybody are already familiar with it, so it just would be like a refresher. So this is basically a three-tier architecture which is widely used nowadays. So earlier days, like it was always a client-based architecture where you have a thick client. So all your processing was done on your local machine, and your performance actually depends on your system architecture, right? Now later, everybody moved more towards the client-server based architecture where your server does the heavy task, and client is basically your rendering part or where your user can interact. So let's take an example of, let's say, Amazon.com. So you can see like you are accessing a full-fledged application via your lightweight program such as a browser, right? So your browser comes as your client tier, that is where your end users are interacting with your application. But any interactions on your client is redirected to your server, and that's where the heavy task comes in. For example, if you are searching for a product, if you are ordering a product, if you are tracking an order, everything is does on your server. Now, if you think about a two-tier architecture, so this logic tier and data tier are tied together. Okay, that means like your code and data lies together. Now, with the three-tier architecture, the objective was to separate your code with data. And that's where you have your logic tier, where you write your business logic. That means like how you handle the client request, interact with the data layer, and respond it back. Right. So this way it is easier to maintain your code base. Okay. So that means like if your code change, your data doesn't have to change, and your data is more valuable than your logic everywhere, right? So this is like a generic thing, nothing really tied to Django or Python. So this can be implemented in any languages. So any language such as like you have a JavaScript, which is becoming very famous nowadays. We have a, if you might remember, we have this ASP pages, JSP pages. So all those things can be implemented in this three-tier architecture, right? So are we good with the concept here of three-tier architecture? Okay. So this is basically how you build a system. Okay. Now let's see like how a MVC design pattern. Okay. So for those who are not really aware of a design pattern, so it's basically a set of rules and guidelines while you are doing a coding. Okay. So one of the widely used design pattern while designing a web-based application or a three-tier architecture or a two-tier architecture is called a model view controller. Okay, or also known as MVC. Now, MVC is a really wide topic, so it might take a few days if I want to really explain in detail what is MVC or how we can implement that. But basically, what you need to know is like this is a design pattern for programs with a user interface. Okay, and this is how you see, represent something in MVC. That is like you have your model, your controller and view, and finally your user. Now let's see what model and view and controller means to us. Okay. So when you think about model, think about data. Okay. Or databases where you actually store your data, right? So your model, when you come into your design or your coding, model represents data. And your view is something which is providing the interface. So if you are seeing a HTML page in which your client can interact with the application, that is a view. Now, what is a controller? Okay. Now, controller is something which links both view and model. Okay. So if a client is asking for a data or asking for a particular piece of functionality, controller is make sure like, yes, the view and model interacts with each other and everything is coordinated. So that's why controller is in mid of here. So again, this is like just in a very gist of it. So you can always find books or documents on like what is a MVC design pattern. Okay. Now, why we are talking about MVC here? The reason is like the Django framework which we are going to learn is basically implements MVC. Okay. Now you can also, one more pointer is like, it is also possible that you can combine the view and controller together while you are implementing it. That means like one view function can act as both view and controller. Is it clear? Okay. So this is very theoretical thing and there's nothing practical about it. So it might be a little bit tough to understand. So, but don't worry about it because we are going to see how it is, can be implemented in Django shortly. Okay. So are we ready for the Django? Okay. Now let's see what is Django. So people pronounce it is in different way, but yeah, basically the pronunciation is Django with a silent D. I have heard people also pronouncing it as Django. But yeah, as long as everybody gets the concept, it's fine. So what is Django? Okay. So it is a web development framework in Python. So is it the only web development framework in Python? No. Or is it the best available framework in Python? No. But so why we are learning Django? Because we are learning Django because it is one of the easiest framework in Python for web development. So we use Python mainly for easy prototyping, but it is also so powerful that you can also use in production. So we have in the live scenario, we have a lot of applications which is using Django as a backend. The thing is like you don't need too much of setting time to open a web page or anything. Okay, it works very straightforward. And implementing the model MVC is also very easy. Interacting with database is easy. Swapping the databases. So that means like if you want to change from MySQL to SQL, you don't have to rewrite so many queries. So those are all the basic features about Django. And you can see like there's one more sentence I have added here. So how MVC is implemented in Django is like a model template view. So model is model, and the view, which is mainly for the user interface, is actually implemented with the use of something called as a template. So template is nothing but a HTML page with some Django syntaxes. So even if it is a just plain HTML, you can call it as like a template. And the controller which links your view and model is called a view. Okay. So just remember, like instead of MVC, we have like MTV. Okay. Is it clear? Now the below commands are just put in for your reference, so that like if you are going in future, if you want to revert it back and to see like what are the few useful commands, you can come back to this slide and refer it. But yeah, I'm going to explain each one of that shortly. Clear? Okay, now what we are going to do is like we are going to start from the scratch. So we are going to create a new project. So what I want everybody to do is like open your command prompt. Okay. So we are not going to start anything from PyCharm, because I hope everybody has a community edition, and community edition doesn't support Django. So let's do in a traditional way. Open your terminal or your command prompt. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. Okay, sorry. Okay, you can open your command prompt, but I'm going to use the shell itself so that I can provide zoom. So make sure you go to a separate directory. So I am in my one blank directory. Okay. And first thing I'm going to do is install Django. Okay. Now I'm going to install the latest version of Django. So if you have both versions of Python, so I'm not sure like how many of you have it. So if you have both Python 2 and Python 3, okay, so it is always better to use pip3 command. So that means like you are using the uh, pip for the Python 3.x. Okay. And you can say pip3 install Django. I already have a Django installed in my machine, so it's just say like a requirement satisfied. But for you guys, it is going to install it. So please let me know in commands like whether your installation has started or not with the command pip3 install Django. So is the Django installed for you? Okay, great. So what we are going to do is like we are going to do a start project. Okay. So the command is like if you are Django admin, okay, and start project and your project name. Okay, so that's it. So Django admin and start project and your project name. Now, if you do a ls or a dir, you should see a folder created there with the project name. So are you guys able to create the project? I'm waiting for your responses so that I can proceed. So did everybody got the folder created or the project created? So this is really important. That's why I'm waiting for you. Okay, I'm seeing like a few people found like Django admin not found. So can you try pip3 freeze like this and see if Django is installed? So if you are doing pip3 freeze and if you are seeing python dot Django dot here, then you should be able to do the Django admin. But if you are not seeing it here, you have to install it again. So what about others? Is there anybody who got it running? Did anybody got the project created? Hmm. Okay. Okay, that is strange. Hmm. So let me think about it. Okay, can you try like Django admin.exe as well? Like this. I hope you are in Windows. Like this. If you're still struggling with that, okay. Okay, if you're in Mac, I think it should be working fine because I am also working from Mac. Okay, so if you're struggling again, what you can do is like, are you trying it from PyCharm? I'm not getting response from others. Can I get some other response also? Like if there is anybody who got the output? Okay, I think I may need, if you're not able to proceed, I think I may have to help you offline. Okay, I think somebody else got output. Uh, okay, so please try from the PyCharm terminal. So I'm going to proceed a little bit. So for those who are stuck, please contact me or from the one of the WhatsApp channels, so I can help you separately. Because since we value everybody's time, we are going to move ahead. Okay, so once you're created, what we are going to do is like we are opening the project from PyCharm. So you can do file open. And you can open the folder directly. Make sure you open the folder which you have created or your project name. So this window. So you got your project. Now what we are going to talk about is a virtual environment. No, okay. No, so I'm not sure like why it didn't work. But yeah, it's not required that you have a virtual environment. It's only required that you install your Python. Maybe you might have already pre-installed different Pythons that might be conflicting. So mostly if you have like two Python installed, so that might conflict. Okay, so now we are going to learn a little bit about virtual environment. So currently we were just using a default virtual environment. So we will see like why we need a virtual environment. So if you are running multiple projects, Python projects, which require multiple or different versions of a same package. For example, I am having two projects. One is with Django 2 and one is with Django 3. So without virtual environment, it's not possible. Because if you install something to your base interpreter, that is something which will affect all your programs. Okay. So all your projects will be in either Django 3 or Django 2. Now, when you're creating a virtual environment, you are creating an isolated miniature environment, which actually works with your base interpreter, but has a different package index. So let's try. Okay. So let's go to your preferences and your interpreter. You can see all your installed interpreters here. So let's okay, I have only basic things. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create a new virtual environment with an empty package. So every time, so you can see now I have like a n number of packages here. So if I go to any other of my applications also, you have different packages. So what I'm going to do is like I'm creating a fresh virtual environment. So for that, you have to click on the gear icon next to the drop down and click add. So you can add like a number of interpreters. So here I'm going to add a virtual environment. So I can say new environment, and by default, it will create a VENV folder under your current project. And base interpreter is like something from which you have to create the virtual environment. Now, if you want any installed packages from your base interpreter, you can click on that. But ideally, I wouldn't recommend that because we want to start fresh. You can also use one environment for multiple projects. So if you click on make available to all projects, so that you can use the same environment for multiple projects. But again, it's not recommended. It's always good to have a different virtual environment per project. Okay, and let's click OK. So basically, it will create a new environment with only basic packages. That is like you need a package manager to install stuff, right? So that's why you have pip and setup tools. Now both serves the same purpose of building and packaging. So, but most of the time we are using pip tools. Okay. Great. So now we don't have any specific or Django installed here. So if you see, this is your project. That is like you have your manage.py file. If you open it also, it is basically a short file. So don't worry about it. It looks a bit small, but this is like your core file for your Python or Django project. Now you have your folder structure here. So, and the main section is your settings.py. So we will go through them as and when required. Okay. Then you have your urls.py where you configure your URLs. But if you enter your urls.py, you can see you are getting an error, right? So this is the reason because we don't have Django installed so much. Okay. We have created a new virtual environment which doesn't have Django. Right. So let's go ahead and install Django. So we have already seen like how we can install it via the package manager from the UI. So this time let's try it from the command line. So if you go to terminal, you should see on the left hand side in brackets VENV. So this means like you are working from your virtual environment. Okay. So let's install Django. So here I don't have to specify pip or pip3 because we are in virtual environment. So pip install and Django. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Now, if you go back to your preferences and interpreter settings, you should see the Django is installed. Okay, I think we have installed. Okay. So you should see the errors are gone now. Right. So let's see if our blank project is running or not. So let's start our Django server. So the command is Python space your manage.py and run server. Press enter. So you should see like you have some error warnings which says like you have unapplied migration. So we will get back to that, but still you should be able to see like your server has started. So is everybody getting the message like starting development server and the prompt saying like quit the server with Control C? Are you with me till here? Okay. So you can click on this URL and you should see this page. Right? So can you see this page? Okay, I don't have anything to zoom here. Okay. So I haven't written any code here. So it's just like you run the command of Python manage.py and run server. Okay. Fine. Now, for today's session, what we are going to do is like we are going to write a simple view function which returns a hello world. Okay. So in Django, every modules are called applications. So this is you should have like a same folder with the name of your project. So this is your core. This is not an application, but this is like you can say it like a core of your project or project. So if you want to create modules, you have to create an app. Okay, so I'm bringing back my slide, which says like, so we have already seen the run server, start project. Now, next thing what we are going to see is start app. Okay. So this is basically for modularizing your application. So you go back to your PyCharm and let's open one more terminal with clicking on the plus icon. So don't close the old one, create a new one. And here I'm going to type the same command, Python manage.py. And here I'm going to say start app. And I say any name. So I'm going to give a name as like my app. Okay. And you should see another folder has created here. Okay, with your name. So you have your migration folder and there are additional files like admin, apps, models, tests, and views. Okay. So we are not going to in depth for each file today. So probably we will cover that in detail next week. So here we are going to write a view function first. Okay. So our objective now is to, if you enter a URL in the browser, you should see a hello world displayed. Okay. So that is our objective. So go back to your view function. Okay. So you have your view file where you actually write your view functions. So view function is basically where you write the logic of what has to be done. Okay. Your business logic is in your view. Okay. So what I'm going to do is like write a Python function def, right? That is the basic syntax. And I'll say a function name. Okay. Now the syntax of a view function is like a normal function how you write, but you say like one argument that is request. Okay. So this is always a standard to make sure like the variable name is request. Yeah, it will work if you give any other names, but this is the standard. Right? Now we have to return something, right? So request is something which contains the information about your HTTP request or whenever you're entering any URL or doing some operations on this application. So, but we have to return something, right? So for this hello world, what we are going to do is like we are going to return a simple HTTP response. So I'm saying return HTTP response. Okay, and say hello world. So you can import it here. If you click on the error, you should be able to see like there should be a suggestion to import it. So if you are not able to see also, you can type on your import statement like from Django.htp import HTTP response. Okay. So we have our function here. So we have our view part of our MVC or MTV, right? Now we have to link this URL because this is a framework. You don't have a main method or anything, right? It is triggered when you are entering a URL. So what we need to do now is like link this function to a specific URL, right? So for that, what we are going to do is like we go to our project folder and open urls.py. Right? Now here what I'm going to do is like I'm going to import my function. So I say from my app dot views import hello, right? Are you guys with me till now? Okay. Okay, take it as a yes. So now what we are going to do is like we are going to link it. So you can copy this, it's fine. And the first thing is your URL. Okay. So ignore the domain name and the port part because that is as where you're hosting. But this thing is a what we specify. So for example, let's specify hello, right? And in the second parameter, we specify the function which we are going to call. So hello. Uh, okay. These two are not same. So this is a string and this is a function, and this can be anything. Okay, it's not necessary both function and your URL pattern should match. Okay. Now, if you go back to your open terminal, you might have seen that it might have already restarted, okay, automatically. Because when you are running your development server, it actually checks for your changes, whatever you are doing on your project. Okay. Now let's see if it still works. So you have your Django app opened here with under the address like 127.0.0.1 8000, I hope. And here you are saying hello. So are you able to get this output? Okay, zoom a bit. Did everybody got the output? Did everybody got a hello world on their browser? Okay, great. Okay, so this is just the beginning of Django because we barely scratched the surface of it. Okay, but what I wanted to show you today is like how easy it is to set up a Django project and get your first web page up. Right? So great work, whoever got the output. So people who might not have got the output or stuck somewhere, I can help you. So just reach out to me offline in the WhatsApp groups. Okay. So what do you think, like so far with the Django? Do you think it is promising? I'm like, I'm not sure like how much of you have already got experience or anything on the web development or anything. But did you found it very easy how you can do this in like I think we have started the Django module like a half an hour back, and now you got your output on your browser. You have created your view functions, right? So what do you think? Okay. I haven't got any response so far, but that's it for today. So, but before going, let's see like what are there for us next week, because next week is going to be a little bit more interesting because we are going to interact with or kind of going to explore more about Django, and it will also be a kind of concluding session if everything goes as per plan. So next week we are going to see like what is the admin interface for Django. Okay, so admin interface is the inbuilt UI from Django which you can interact and you can do a lot of stuff with that. Then we are going to use models in Django with SQLite 3 database. Now this is like a free database, and it Django has a inbuilt support for SQLite 3. That means like you don't have to install or any packages or database or anything to use SQLite 3. Okay. And for those who are already familiar with SQL queries or anything, you might see like how easy it is to interact with the database with Django, because we are going to interact with the database without writing a SQL query. Okay. So for me, when I heard, yes, you can do something without writing SQL query, it was one of the happiest moments for me, because it's always a little bit of struggle when you are writing queries every time, or you have to change queries every time. Then we can see what are make migrations and migrations. We can see what are templates. So today we only seen like what is a HTTP response with a simple hello world, right? Now we can see how we can use templates to bring out like a higher level HTML pages. Then finally, what we are going to do is like we are going to apply all our knowledge to build a sample web application, which will allow you to add a new book to the database and list it back, right? Yep. So that's all I have planned for you next day. But all your suggestions and comments are welcome. So please, provide us with your feedback. So what you like, what you don't like, or what you would like to see in a session. Okay. So thank you everyone for attending the session and spending 2 hours of your precious time of your weekend. So I will leave it up to you to practice it, and the path is open. So please explore and happy learning. Thank you.